This was supposed to be a demonstration of how to tell a story, but I want to break this down into 3 key lessons to help you when you tell your stories. After the war, Chiang Kai-shek, the then ruler of China, awkwardly and brutally ran Taiwan with an iron fist. When they all came to Taiwan, many of these refugees were living in military dependence villages. They all felt miserable and depressed, and they tried to recreate memories of their own old homes that they worried that they would never see again. And in particular, they tried to recreate their old food they loved so much. So you got spring onion pancakes, a popular snack from the north, and even beef noodle soup, which traces its origins to Sichuan as a Hongshan Niu Rou Mian. It may be, in fact, that this was the way from these Waishangren that taught the local Taiwanese to eat beef. Before that, many Taiwanese didn't like eating beef because the cow was their friend. But after they tried beef noodle soup, they never looked back. These Waishangren were also not just going to change Taiwanese food, they were going to change Chinese food in America too. And one of those unusual movers and shakers was this guy, Wu Zhaonan. Wu Zhaonan, funnily enough, is the inventor of Mongolian barbecue. He originally had run away from Beijing, and he was trying to recreate a popular Beijing street food snack where you pick whatever food you want to grill, and then the Laoban grills it for you and you eat it. Now, he couldn't call this Beijing barbecue because, well, emotions were still a little bit raw. I don't blame him. So, okay, not Beijing, Mongolian barbecue. There, call it that. Even though this food has nothing to do with Mongolian food, and after more and more people copied his idea of Mongolian barbecue, many brought it to America, and has now become a mainstay on a lot of menu items in the US, but also in the UK. This link between Taiwan and America was going to go both ways. The Americans too would end up influencing Taiwanese food. The first 20 years of the Cold War, there were American air bases all over the island, and one of their biggest air bases was in Jiayi. So, what holiday will Americans be celebrating? Thanksgiving. And what is it that they eat in Thanksgiving? Turkey! And, just like now, the Americans, who were over in Jiayi, they wanted some turkey for Thanksgiving. Well, after they were done with the turkey, the enterprising locals of Jiayi found a way to use up their turkey leftovers to make turkey rice, 火鸡饭, 回鸡马棒. And it's one of the loveliest things you can find in Taiwan nowadays, and a perfect way to use up Christmas leftovers too, because hey, in Britain, we use turkey for Christmas. So I'm pretty sure I might be able to convince my mum and dad to find a way to use the leftovers this way. Another thing that ended up coming to Taiwan in the wake of the end of the Second World War was shacha sauce. Basically comes from Southeast Asia, Malaysia, possibly Indonesia too. Many people that live in Jakarta, they have their origins in the Hoglaw people, who, in days gone by, found their way to work in Indonesia. And while they were living there, they became very fond of satays, grilled meat skewers, one of the greatest things that has ever existed on this earth. And these Hoglaw Indonesians, when they came to Taiwan or to Hong Kong, they wanted to recreate this sauce that they thought they had back in Jakarta. They didn't really know how to make it. Maybe it had some shrimp, it had some chilies, some shallots. Okay, we call it satay sauce, and from satay you get satay, which, when you translate it into Mandarin, you get cha-cha. Kind of funny how it all works out. You got a journey of people, but also a journey of language. And it's these links that go across the waters, from mainland China to Indonesia to America and back again. It's these links that what define the modern era. And in the modern era, Taiwan has not only become a developed society, but it's become a prosperous society, and it's become an indispensable part of the global economy. And yeah, we can talk about TSMC and how they've made all our computers and our phones work and all that, but Taiwan still has more gifts for the international community. And one of the most famous is, of course, bubble tea. 珍珠奶茶, or I think in Taiki they call it 红叶冷茶, 冷茶. I'm still learning Taiwanese. And the transliterations you see here are invented by me, so please let me know how I'm doing. The popularity of bubble tea has exploded all over the world, and you can find this now in basically every city from Toronto to Timbuktu. It's even starting to take on in Britain, although old habits die hard. We're still getting used to the little tapioca balls. But it's this novelty the new innovations, the new creations that define a lot of modern Taiwanese food. And it's taking traditional recipes and shaking it all up for a modern audience. So, what can you learn from this? Number one, for a compelling story, you need more than just dates and a timeline. Because dates and timelines, the journalists call that MEGO, M-E-G-O. My eyes glaze over. So try to find a topic that everyone can connect to and use that as your phrase. Second, when telling grand stories or sweeping stories, it helps to talk about specific individuals. If you have a main character, it helps the audience connect more to your story. So telling the stories about how Zheng Chenggong kicked out the Dutch but couldn't take China, but he still enjoyed his milkfish congee. Telling the stories about how a fisherman became a chef, or about how a refugee from Beijing created a food trend and then became a comedian. Even if you can't find a specific individual, try to include emotions and feelings, talking about, say, how the Hakka people were running away from persecution in the mainland, or the refugees trying to recreate memories of their old home. Just remember what Bruce Lee said in Enter the Dragon: we need emotional content. And finally, step 3, end your story properly. So, either end your story by returning back to where you started, so it's kind of like a hero's journey story, or in this case, tying everything into a nested loop. Or, if you don't know where the story will end, then, well, leave it open-ended, but let the audience know that the future is unwritten, and that they are in the process of writing this future with every day, with every action, with every word. Thank you. Or 谢谢, or I think in Taigi they say 等下